Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Shareholders, good morning again. I'm Anderson, and I've been asked to chair today's meeting as our chairman, Mr. Charles Parody, is overseas. It's my pleasure to extend to you, our shareholders, a very warm welcome to our third annual general meeting since our company was listed on the JSE. Despite the easing of restrictions under the RMA Act, this year's AGM is being done in a hybrid format to allow for greater participation of our shareholders, both remotely and in person. I'd like to therefore especially acknowledge our shareholders, invitees, and directors who are participating online. Please be advised that the meeting is being recorded. Allow me at this time to introduce to you, in addition to myself, the members of the board of directors of Transgenics. Our chairman, Mr. Charles Hardy, Julie Thompson-James, Alok Jan, Ian Dare, who is sitting at the head table, Patrick Hilton, Stephen Goody, Dr. Benson Brown, who has apologized, he'll be a few minutes late, and Mr. Stephen Edwards. We also would like to acknowledge the presence of the chairman of our audit committee, Mr. John Bell, who is also present on our online platform. Members of our management team who are also present today, Suzanne Brown, Head of Finance and Corporate Services, Melbourne Lynn Cook, Manager of Quality Assurance, Planning Engineer, and myself, Arthur Anderson. I'd like to now invite Mrs. Brown to offer a word of prayer before we get started.
Good morning again, everyone. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for today and for the many blessings you have continuously bestowed upon us. We thank you that once again we are able to gather to discuss our company's business, and particularly gather in this fashion of persons being here physically and persons joining us online. We thank you for the continued support of our bondholders, shareholders, and other stakeholders. We thank you for the leadership and the management of our company and pray for your continuous blessings on the Highway 2000 East-West team as we continue to do our best in serving our commuters and each other. We thank you for Jamaican land we love and for the favor you continue to show us. Help us as a people to realize how blessed we are and to do more to protect and preserve our island and culture. We ask that you will govern today's meeting and let everything be done to your glory. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Suzanne. I've been asked to lead the proceedings of this meeting, but before we start, I'd like to personally thank members of our team who are here. Mr. Kareem and Claudia walking around, so if you need anything, Claudia is at the back. Kareem on the right in pictures. I've been advised by the company secretary, Mrs. Brown, that in accordance with the company's Articles of Association, a quorum is present. The quorum requirement is 3 shareholders present in person or by proxy, and that shall be a quorum. I now declare the annual general meeting open and duly constituted. I've been advised by the company secretary as well that there are no apologies for absence. Also with us is Ms. Karen Lewin, audit manager of EY, the company's external auditors, who are also present. The Jamaica Central Securities Depository, our registrar and transfer agent, is represented by Ms. Alicia Dean, Ms. Tamika Ricketts, and Mr. Giovanni Lynch, and Mr. O'Dane Vivas. and they are also present. I would like to now introduce the chairman of the board of TGH, Mr. Charles Parody, who has been the chairman of TGH since our formation more than 20 years ago, to give his opening remarks.
On behalf of the board, let me thank you most sincerely for your continuing support of the company. This year marks 21 years since TransJamaican Highway Limited was formed and 19 years since we commenced our operations with the opening of our first Sol Plaza at our Vineyards location back in 2003. Until the pandemic impacted our operation in 2020, we had become accustomed to seeing average growth rates of 12% per annum in our traffic volumes. The measures taken by the government between 2020 and 22 to stop the spread of this virus have obviously weighed on the movement of people and has resulted in a significant drop in the number of transactions on our motorway network over this period. We are pleased, however, to report that the impact of the pandemic on our traffic is now substantially behind us. And in 2021, traffic was only 1.65% below 2019 levels. For the first 5 months of 2022, January to May, traffic on our network is now 7.4% in excess of the pre-pandemic similar periods in 2019. In order to make it easier for our customers to use the highway, in March of this year, we built and put into operation our new MyTTag app. And by May, more than 13,000 users were utilizing the app with a cumulative amount of transactions of more than 165 million Jamaican dollars being done through the app. For the year 2021, our net profit also moved from a net loss of $1.8 million in 2020 to a profit of $3.99 million in 2021. Despite the pandemic, we have ensured that all our debt service payments to our bondholders were made on time and without drawing any funds from our debt service reserve accounts. In addition, the board was able to approve the payment of $6.9 million in dividends, which have represented $0.55 per 1,000 stock units. This dividend payment resulted in a dividend yield on the TGH stock in 2021 being the second highest of all companies traded on the main market of the Jamaican Stock Exchange for 2021. As we look to the future, we continue to be focused on the new opportunities which are presenting themselves. This year, we expect to start work on the new ramps onto the highway in order to further boost traffic. We have also exercised our right of first refusal for operating the future section of Highway 2000 East-West, now under construction between Maypen and Williamsfield. Once again, we wish to take this opportunity to say thank you to our shareholders who continue to partner with us. Without you, none of this would be possible. I now hand over to Ivan Anderson for conducting further this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. With this hybrid format, we want to provide all our shareholders with the opportunity to be able to hear, see, and participate in the proceedings of the meeting. We take the opportunity to remind our shareholders who are participating online that as stated in the notice and explanatory circular provided for this meeting, that questions may be asked by emailing TJHIGHWAY, tjhighway@h2k-tjh.com. Let me just say that again. tjhighway@h2k-tjh.com. We'll dedicate a half an hour for a question and answer session later in the meeting. And please also note that questions that are not answered immediately will be responded to subsequently. The notice of the meeting and the form of proxy were dispatched to all shareholders on record as at April 27, 2022, in accordance with the company's articles of association. If there is no objection, I propose that the notice of the meeting be taken as read. May I have a mover for this resolution? Thank you, Mr. Skipper. Seconder? Bloomfield. Thank you, Mr. Bloomfield. All in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. The motion is carried. The purpose of the annual general meeting is to seek the approval of shareholders for the respective resolutions outlined in the notice of resolutions, and are duly set out in the notice of the annual general meeting dated the 27th day of April 2022, and duly signed by the company secretary. The first item of ordinary business is the adoption of the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2020. December 31, 2021, together with the reports of the directors and auditors thereon. The second item is to ratify the interim dividend payments and declare them final. The third item is to elect the directors. The fourth item is to approve the remuneration of the directors. And the fifth item of business is the appointment of auditors, Ernst & Young, and that the board be allowed to fix the auditor's remuneration. Now, we will conduct the business of the meeting as set forth in the notice. In order to conduct an orderly meeting and give all eligible shareholders an opportunity to participate, we will follow the procedures as mentioned earlier. Questions and comments from the floor should pertain to the item on the notice being discussed. And I ask that person in attendance wishing to speak to raise their hand, and you will be provided with the microphone, where you will state your name and status as a shareholder for the minutes. Resolution number 1. In accordance with Article 179 of the Company's Articles of Incorporation, the company is obliged to lay before this meeting the audited financial statements, together with the reports of the directors and auditors, which are contained in the company's annual report for the year ended December 31, 2021. I will now ask Ms. Paris Lewin from EY to read the auditor's report.
Thank you. Good morning. Independent Auditor's Report to the members of TransJamaican Highway Limited. Report on the audit of the financial statements. Opinion. We have audited the financial statements of TransJamaican Highway Limited, the company, which comprise a statement of financial position as at December 31, 2021, the statements of comprehensive income/loss, changes in equity, and cash flows for the year then ended, and notes, comprising significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of the company as at December 31, 2021, and of its financial performance and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, and the Jamaican Companies Act. Basis for opinion. We conducted our audit in accordance with International Standards on Auditing, ISAs. Our responsibilities under those standards are further described In the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of financial statements section of our report, we are independent of the company in accordance with the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, IESBA, International Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, including International Independent Standards, IESBA Code, and we have fulfilled our other ethical responsibilities in accordance with the IESBA Code. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Key audit matters. Key audit matters are those that, in our professional judgment, were most significant in our audit of the financial statements of the current period. These matters were addressed in the context of our audit of the financial statements as a whole and informing our opinion thereon, and we do not provide a separate opinion on these matters. For each matter below, our description of how our audit addressed the matter is provided in that context. We have fulfilled the responsibilities described in the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements section of our report, including in relation to these matters. Accordingly, our audit included the performance of procedures designed to respond to our assessment of the risk of material misstatement of financial statements. The results of our audit procedures, including the procedures performed to address the matters below, provide the basis for our audit opinion on the accompanying financial statements. Deferred tax assets. Recoverability of tax losses carried forward. As discussed in Note 8 and Note 20, at December 31, 2021, a net deferred tax asset of 20.71 million was recorded on the statement of financial position in respect of deferred tax assets of 20.28 million and deferred tax liabilities of 7.58 million. Included in the assets is 26.51 million, representing deferred taxes in respect of tax losses carried forward and available indefinitely. The company has recognized deferred tax assets related to tax losses to the extent that the realization of the related tax benefits through future taxable profits is probable. The estimate of future taxable profits is based on a strategic financial plan which requires management and the board of directors to exercise significant judgments in determining the assumptions of forecast of future taxable profits, including expectations for future revenue developments, traffic projections, as well as overall macroeconomic conditions. The recognition of deferred tax assets is therefore sensitive to changes in the strategic financial plan, as well as to the assumptions made in the estimation of future taxable income. As part of our audit procedures, we have obtained an understanding and evaluated the design and implementation of the company's key controls over the recognition and measurement of deferred tax assets. Involved EY specialists to assess the reasonableness of the key economic assumptions embedded in the strategic financial plan. Compare the company's forecasted future taxable income to externally available data and the company's actual historical data and performance, and assess the sensitivity of the outcomes to reasonably possible changes in assumptions, and evaluated the adequacy of the disclosures in the notes regarding the recognition of deferred tax assets based on unused tax losses. Intangible assets related to service concessions, agreements, IFRIC 12, and related impairment assessment. Intangible assets amounted to 225.77 million as of December 31, 2021, and accounted for 73% of the total non-current assets. As disclosed in Note 4, amortization is charged so as to write off the cost of intangible assets over the period of concession using a projection of traffic on the highway over this period. This projection was reassessed in May 2021 by SPEAR, an external consultant from the United Kingdom, and further amended at the end of the reporting period to incorporate the projected impact of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The projection is based on various estimates and assumptions surrounding, among other things, macroeconomic variables and toll road traffic demand. These assumptions can vary in practice, and the actual outcome depends on such factors as population growth and the development of other sections of the highway. The policy of the Board of Directors and Management is to update the forecast periodically based on the actual traffic. At the end of the period, management performed an impairment assessment on the intangible assets which were within the scope of Item 12. The recoverability of these assets was verified through a comparison between the carrying amount and the recoverable amount being the higher of fair value and value in use. As part of our audit procedures, we have obtained an understanding and evaluated the design and implementation of the company's internal control over processes related to the intangible assets. Verified the reconciliation of the register, the general ledger values, and the completeness and accuracy of the actual traffic data, and recalculated amortization charges for the year. Placed reliance on the external consultant's traffic projection report over the concession period, and therefore assess the external consultant's qualifications, that is, professional certification, membership in an appropriate professional body, experience, and reputation in the field. We also assess the external consultant's objectivity, and with the assistance of EY specialists, evaluated the work performed, including reviewing the assumptions and inputs used in the report, in accordance with ISA 620, using the work of an expert. Examine the method adopted by management to identify and assess possible indicators of impairment of the intangible assets with the assistance of EY specialists. We performed the impairment assessment and confirmed the company's conclusion that intangible assets were not impaired and assessed the accuracy and completeness of the disclosures presented in the financial statements. Provision for heavy repairs. As discussed in Note 4, the provision for highway repairs relate to the estimated cost for scheduled repairs for periods ranging from 7 years to the end of the concession period, based on projections made throughout the duration of the concession. The provision is based on the same estimates and assumptions included in the company's operations and maintenance plan, done biannually for the next 6 semi-annual periods, and reviewed by the company's independent engineer, Arup North America Limited. Actual cash outflows will depend on the timing of the maintenance program based on annual approved budgets, the condition of the highway as determined by ongoing surveys, deterioration, and the phasing of major works to meet those obligations. See Note 15. The process of developing a provision requires management to use judgment, which could inherently be subjective. As part of our audit procedures, we have obtained an understanding and evaluated the design and implementation of the company's internal control over provision for heavy repairs processes, placed reliance on the independent engineer's review of the operations and maintenance plan, and therefore assessed the independent engineer's qualifications, that is, professional certification, membership in an appropriate professional body, experience, and a reputation in the field. We also assessed the independent engineer's objectivity and evaluated the work performed
including reviewing the assumptions and inputs used in the report in accordance with ISA 620 using the work of an expert. Recalculated the provision using the applicable measurement inputs and assess the planned timetable for utilizing the provisions. Evaluated the historical accuracy of the provision assessed by management by comparing the actual utilization to the historical provisions made, and assess the adequacy of the disclosure of provisions made in the financial statements. Other information included in the annual report. Other information consists of the information included in the company's annual report other than the financial statements and our auditor's report thereon. Management is responsible for the other information. The company's annual report is expected to be made available to us after the date of this auditor's report. Our opinion on the financial statements does not cover the other information, and we will not express any form of assurance conclusion thereon. In connection with our audit of the financial statements, our responsibility is to read the other information identified above when it becomes available, and in doing so, consider whether the other information is materially inconsistent with the financial statements, or our knowledge obtained in the audit, or otherwise appears to be materially misstated. Responsibilities of management and the board of directors for the financial statements. Management is responsible for the preparation of financial statements that give a true and fair view in accordance with IFRS and the Jamaican Companies Act, and for such internal control as management determines is necessary to enable the preparation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. In preparing the financial statements, management is responsible for assessing the company's ability to continue as a going concern, disclosing as applicable matters related to going concern, and using the going concern basis of accounting unless management either intends to liquidate the company or to cease operations or has no realistic alternative but to do so. The board of directors is responsible for overseeing the company's financial reporting process. Auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statements. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but is not a guarantee that an audit conducted in accordance with ISAs will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. Misstatements can arise from fraud or error and are considered material if, individually or in the aggregate, they could reasonably be expected to influence the economic decisions of the users taken on the basis of these financial statements. As part of an audit in accordance with ISAs, we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risk of material misstatement of the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks, and obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than for one resulting from error, as fraud may involve collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, misrepresentations, or the override of internal control. Obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstance, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the company's internal control. Evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates and related disclosures made by management. conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis of accounting, and, based on the audit evidence obtained, whether a material uncertainty exists related to the events or conditions that may cast significant doubt on the company's ability to continue as a going concern. If we conclude that a material uncertainty exists, we are required to draw attention in our auditor's report to the related disclosures in the financial statements, or, if such disclosures are inadequate, to modify our audit opinion. Our conclusions are based on the audit evidence obtained up to the date of our auditor's report. However, future events or conditions may cause the company to cease to continue as a going concern. Evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content of the financial statements, including the disclosures, and whether the financial statements represent the underlying transactions and events in a manner that presents a true and fair view. We communicate with the Board of Directors regarding, among other matters, the planned scope and timing of the audit and significant audit findings, including any significant deficiencies in internal control that we identify during our audit. We also provide the Board of Directors with a statement that we have complied with the relevant ethical requirements regarding independence, and to communicate with them all relationships and other matters that may reasonably be thought to bear on our independence and, where applicable, related safeguards. From the matters communicated with the Board of Directors, we determined those matters that were of most significance in the audit of the financial statements of the current period and are therefore the key audit matters. We describe these matters in our auditor's report unless law or regulation precludes public disclosure about the matter, or when, in extremely rare circumstances, we determine that a matter should not be communicated in our report because the adverse consequences of doing so would reasonably be expected to outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Report on additional matters as required by the Jamaican Companies Act. We have obtained all the information and explanations which, to the best of our knowledge and belief, were necessary for the purpose of our audit. In our opinion, proper accounting records have been maintained so far as appears from our examination of those records, and the financial statements, which are in agreement therewith, gave the information required by the Jamaican Companies Act in the manner required. The engagement partner on the audit resulting in this independent auditor's report is Kian Sodlow, signed Ernst & Young, Chartered Accountants, Kingston, Jamaica, March 7, 2022.
Thank you, Karis. So now we will present the director's report, and this will be done by myself and Suzanne. The director's report will cover the key highlights of last year, look at the impact of COVID, the outlook for the future, and report on the 2021 results in more detail. So the year 2021 continued from 2020 with similar impacts from COVID. So in January, we had a reasonably good level of traffic following on from December the previous year. And then we started having curfews. So if you remember early in the year, we had a number of curfews. And those continued to impact on our traffic from March through to April. Just as about the curfews ended, you recall we had the reopening of the entertainment industry, and the traffic began to once again climb May through June through July. And then we had lockdowns, no movement days. And obviously those impact significantly on the traffic. The good news, however, is that by the end of the year, we had again recovered. And traffic was up over 11% over 2020. So in comparison to the previous years, while we were up 11% in terms of traffic volumes, we were still obviously below our 2019 volumes and also, in fact, below our 2018 volumes. The revenues, however, were a lot better. And so for the year 2021, our revenues were up 15% over 2020 and actually above 2018, but still slightly below 2019 numbers. So our revenues for 2021 was 52.75 million as compared to 53.28 million in the pre-pandemic periods. So like many other industries, the pandemic required that we pivot and begin to look at all the areas of our operation, starting from what is it our customers expect of us? What are the issues that they are having with us? Why are they using the road? How can we make the road better for them to utilize? We also started looking at what are the other long-term development issues that we can bring to bear which will increase the traffic volumes on the roadway. And thirdly, we looked at the structure of the organization. How do we compare? How do our costs, for example, per transaction compare with leading firms worldwide? Are we the best at what we do? And therefore, what do we need to do to change those things? So in relation to our customer survey, we did a survey of almost 1,000 customers, 973 customers, all customers who had traveled recently on the highway, with a margin of error of about plus or minus 3.2%. We then used that customer information along with the lab to develop a brand new marketing campaign for the company to focus on those areas that our customers were also focusing on. The campaign reminded our customers of the importance of time, and that time was too valuable to spend waiting in line. There were three main themes of the campaign: less time, less money, less hassle. A lot of people don't recognize that just by sitting in traffic, in fact, a car which is idling in traffic will use about 1.85 liters of fuel every hour. I mean, at our prices, at about $460 for every hour it sits idling in traffic. So sometimes when people think that they're saving money by going around the long way, by sitting in the traffic, that they're actually saving money, that is actually not the case. And we also focused on another area which our customers were also focusing on. How do we make this whole business of using the highway, getting a tag, topping up the tag, easier to do? So that led to what we call our Get the T-Tag campaign, or what we call our Grab and Go campaign. So customers could just drive up to the toll plaza, they didn't have to come out to your car, didn't have to go into the office, didn't have to stand in a line. Our team members would come to you and give you a tag in your vehicle. We also launched 5 Bills for the Road campaign. For every new sign-up, we give them $500 credit on their T-Tag balances. We also developed, as the chairman indicated earlier, a new My T-Tag app, which allowed made it easier for our customers to be able to top up their accounts. In fact, the app has some special features. I trust a number of you would have tried them. Auto top up, auto schedule top up, which means that you don't have to remember when to top up your account. You can set the app. You want to top up, every Monday morning when you're going to work with $1,000, and the app will automatically top up every Monday morning with $1,000. Or you can set what we call a threshold top up. So you set a threshold, let's say $1,000 or $1,500, and you want to be able to top up once your balance drops below $1,500. You want to add, let us say, $1,000. The app will automatically do that as well. So no longer will you have to worry about, do I have credit? Do I have credit on my TTAG account? The app will do that for you. And so we launched the campaign in February of 2022. So in our first month, in January, our traffic was still down by about 0.94% in January. So we were slightly below where we were pre-pandemic levels. Everybody with me so far? So in January, so we're talking about January of this year now. So we launched our app in February of this year, and we launched our new marketing program in February of this year. So in January, we were slightly below where we were in 2019. By the end of February, we're actually up 7.26%. And remember, this is up not on 2020, this is up on 2020 pre-pandemic levels. Sorry, I'm sorry. This is up on 2019 pre-pandemic levels. So by 2022, we're up on 2021, we're up on 2020, and we are back to above pre-pandemic levels. By March, a similar scenario. We're up again 7.69% over 2019, over 2020, over 2021. By April, we're up even more. Up now 12.5% above 2019. So we are well back into recovery. In May, last month, we're now up 11% again over 2019. So year to date, January through May, we are now up 7.39% over 2019. We have big news, our traffic is back. But where do we go from here? Some of the large projects we're looking at. The first one is Phase 1C. As you recall, as part of the concession, we have what is called a right of first refusal to operate the Phase 1C section of the highway, which goes from Maypen all the way to Williamsfield, approximately 28 kilometers of roadway, which is now under construction. This section of roadway is slated to be completed now by the March of 2023. We've done all our traffic studies. We've done all our assessments. We anticipate that the traffic from this section of the highway will add maybe about $7 million US of revenues to the highway. We're working on our compatibility issues to make sure that there is a seamless route from the existing highway onto the new highway. And we have exercised our right of first refusal in relation to this section. And we expect a decision from NROC in the coming months. But what about other roads? Where are the other opportunities? One of the areas we're looking at is what is happening along Mandela Highway. This is a video of traffic going west. So you know when you're traveling on Mandela Highway, going towards Kingston. And notice this is with the completion of the widening of Mandela. So what you're seeing is, even with the widening of Mandela, you still have this issue with congestion taking place going west out of Kingston in the afternoon. And a lot of that is primarily due to traffic trying to get into Portmore from Mandela. So this is also compounded by the discussions regarding the redevelopment of Burn Lodge. So you know that Burn Lodge is currently being redeveloped. A number of housing schemes are actually being built in the area. Phoenix Estate, which has a planned build out of about 5,000 units. Catherine Estates on the other side of the road, which has a planned build out of approximately 1,650 units. So those things are going to compound the traffic issues on Mandela. And so what we're doing, as we've discussed, is looking at how we can create new accesses to the highway to get into those new communities. How do we get into Catherine Estates? How do we get into Phoenix Estates? How do we get into the rest of Portmore from the highway? So again, we've done the studies for this section of the road. Our traffic advisors have looked at it, reviewed it, and we've had an agreement in principle now with the regulators, NAA and NROC, and we're now proceeding to complete the final designs for these new ramps. The other location we're looking at is the area coming into Spanish Town from Old Harbour Road. So you know, when you're driving from Old Harbour to Spanish Town on the Old Road, that Old Harbour Road section in the morning is very congested. So these red dots, these red lines are actually lines of traffic on the Old Road coming into Spanish Town in the morning. And again, that's being compounded by the new developments taking place. Silverson, which is being built on the northern side of Old Harbour Road. We have the Jacaranda development already built, the White Waters development already built, the Orchards development already built, which are all feeding into the traffic coming into Spanish Town. So the proposal again is to create a new access on that Heartland Road. That Heartland Road is that traffic light just after you come past Silverson, just by where Jacaranda is, to allow people coming into Spanish Town to then get onto the highway and get into Kingston. Based on our traffic assessments, we believe that this new ramp will add another few thousand vehicles to the highway traffic over the next few years. Again, we have preliminary approval from NROC and from NAA, and we're doing the detailed designs to allow these works to hopefully commence by the end of the year. But not only are we working on the question of the ramps themselves, but also how do we make it easier for customers to be able to pay. Right now, none of the roadways allow for credit cards to be able to be utilized. And on these new ramps that we're proposing, these new ramps are going to be tag only. So we don't expect to have individual toll collectors at these new locations. So people either have to use their tags or use their credit cards. And for that, we're now developing a brand new system to allow for credit cards to be able to be utilized in these new ramps. Similarly, we've been part of the pilot Everybody knows about CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. And so we've been working with the BOJ and with NCB in developing a mechanism which will allow us to be able to use CBDC or the digital currency at our toll plazas. And again, hopefully we'll be able to talk a lot more about that in the coming months. We've built, along with Total, a gas station at Old Harbour, and we expect that early next year we will start the construction of a new gas station site along the Portmore Causeway. We also expect to offer some new discount features for our customers. So come July, we expect to be able to introduce a brand new discounting scheme for our customers at Portmore. So traditionally, our customers who use cash and who pay by tag pay the same rate. We have requested approval to allow us to be able to charge a differential rate. So customers who have tags will actually pay less than customers who pay by cash. So our commuters, people who use the highway every day, and people who have tags will therefore get a benefit in terms of the cost of using the highway. And finally, we're making it easier to be able to get a tag. So currently, in order to get a tag, you have to go to the point of sale or you have to go to one of our grab-and-go sites. But we have now implemented new equipment at the toll plazas, implementing new software. And what will this allow? This will allow you to be able to get a tag anywhere. You go to the gas station, you pick up a tag off of the shelf. You go to the pharmacy, you need a tag, you pick up a tag. Anywhere you go drive through the lane, you need a tag, you can get a tag. And all of that we expect to also launch in the next month. In relation to share price, a lot of you will pay attention to our share price. And while we're not able to influence or to speak directly to the share price movement, one thing that I think we should notice about our share price, but not so much about our share price, but about our dividend yield, the dividends that we pay, is that TGH pays dividends which are second to none. Well, let me say second to one. There is only one company on the main market that pays more dividends than we do. So even though you may not be getting a significant appreciation in the share price, well, let me just say that the share price is actually higher now than it was at the IPO. But apart from that, even though you may not be getting a large appreciation on the share price, the dividend yield that you're getting is very significant. And as I said, the second highest on the exchange. Finally, as I said at the start, there were three areas that we were looking at. What do our customers think? How are they viewing us? What do they require of us? We were looking at what are our plans for the future? How can we improve the traffic on the highway? But the third area we're looking at, and for those of you who saw the news this morning, we're looking at how we can restructure the operation of the company to make it more efficient. And so today, we actually gave notice to the stock exchange that we are currently in negotiations with GIO. So GIO is the entity that we are contracted to do the day-to-day toll collections along the highway. So we retain GIO for that toll collection role. And we are currently in negotiations with GIO to sign a share purchase agreement for the acquisition of 100% of the shares of GIO by TGH. Let me just give you an indication. So when you look at in your financials, 50%, more than 50% of our operating expenses are related to the fees that we pay GIO for their operation. In fact, 35 cents out of every dollar that we earn goes to paying GIO for their operations. So we're not able to say a lot more about it now, but we expect that within another few weeks, we'll be able to say a lot more about that transaction. Thank you very much. Let me hand over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Ivan. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the persons who came in after Mr. Anderson gave his welcome. Welcome and thank you for joining us. All right, so I have a clicker. All right, so I'll be going through the results of the operations for the year 2021, and it should be short. Mr. Anderson has done a lot of the work already, so we'll just jump right into the statement of comprehensive income. All right, so in terms of 2021, we had a good year despite the COVID-19 conditions, especially the measures and the effects it had on our operations. So Mr. Anderson went through thoroughly how those measures affected the traffic. But despite that, we closed the year with a net profit of 3.9 million. And you'd have seen in our quarterly financial statements for last year that we had 4 consecutive quarters of profit, which was very good. Yes. Mr. Anderson went through the revenue already, but just to reiterate, we had revenues of 52.7 million, and which was, he said 15, but it's really 16% when we compare to 2020. And when we look at 2019, we were only 1% below that year, which is a good indication for us that we were at the point of traffic recovery, and it gave an indication as to how this year what we are to expect for this year. All right, we speak about our operating expenses. So operating expenses were 34.1 million and was 10% over operating expenses of financial year 2020. The key elements, as Mr. Anderson mentioned, our operator's fee is the greater portion of our expenses, and that was 53% over 2020. And then we have the amortization of the intangibles, that is writing off the cost to build the road network over the period of the concession, and that was 36% over last year. 5% went to repairs and maintenance, 4% increase in insurance, and 2% being others, and that's for legal and professional, bank charges, etc. When we look at finance cost, so our finance cost went down. It was 15.3 million for last year, and this was 1.8 million below the previous year, being 2020, and that was 17.1 million. And so if you remember last year, we spoke about the restructuring exercise that started in 2019, part of that restructuring exercise saw us paying out our existing loans and acquiring new secured notes, in March 2020. And so we have been paying a far lower percentage in terms of interest rates, and we are seeing the benefits of that in the lower financial cost for 2021. In terms of taxation, we had a deferred tax charge of 1.3 million for the year 2021, and this allowed for total comprehensive income of 4 million, as we said before, and it compares to a loss for 2020 of 1.87 million. For the 2020 period, the deferred tax was 613,000. Doesn't want to seem to leave here. All right, so we're going on to the statement of financial position. All right, so we look at our assets, and so the primary categories for us for assets, intangible assets, and as we know, that is what the cost we put or associate to the road network, and that was 225.8 million for financial year 2021. Then we have deferred tax assets, which is 20.7 million in value for financial year 2021. Restricted cash of 54.6 million for the year 2021. And of course, the restricted cash is the funds we hold in reserve in accordance with the agreements we have for the bondholders. We're moving on to liabilities. So primary liabilities, borrowings for us, as we've been speaking about the secured notes, which were issued in March 2020. At the end of financial year 2021, the principal amount was 220.9 million because we started making principal payments in April of last year. So that is going down. In terms of the preference share, so again, in 2020, we a part of the restructuring, we converted the preference shares that were then on books to cumulative redeemable preference shares. And these preference shares are held in Jamaican dollars. But for the purpose of our accounting, last year, the value of the preference shares was 24.7 million. We also have as liabilities the provisions we hold for renewals, and that was 10.4 million, and this is a provision that we hold in anticipation of major repairs that will be done on the highway in the future. In terms of equity, our share capital remained at 27 million last year, same as 2020. And for shareholders' equity, so we closed the year with 27.1 million, and the profit of last year, 4 million, as well as the dividend that was issued at the end of the year, 6.9 million, resulted in the 27.1 million that we closed with for last year. So as I promised, it would have been short, as the work was already done. So I'm going to hand over back to Mr. Anderson, who will handle the question and answers and also move into the resolutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Suzanne. And as we indicated, if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you. And please state your name for the record. Mr. Staple. Kareem.
Mr. Chair, good morning to you and your members. Good morning, fellow shareholders. Mr. Chair, with your permission, I have a few observations I would like to share before I ask my question. So with your permission, I would like to look at the observation before I ask my questions. With your permission.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Let us all give thanks to Creator God for taking us safely to this meeting today. We invite His Holy Spirit in this meeting and ask Him to guide our thoughts and actions and help us to appreciate each other's participation. Bless us all, Father God, and at the end of our meeting, please take us safely to our individual destination. Congratulations to our chairman, members of the board, employees, for the tremendous work that you have done despite the pandemic, moving from a lost position in 2020 to a positive position in 2021. Very good management discussion and analysis, which has enabled us to appreciate the work of our organization. Thanks to our CEO, Mr. Anderson, and his team for this presentation. For the next AGM, Mr. Chair, and onwards, please tabulate all members' attendance at various meetings. Obviously, no one attended any meetings in 2020 and 2021 because there was no sign of anybody attending meetings. Please ensure that a board evaluation is being done annually of the board. Those are my observations, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Staple.
And I would like for you to, and you and your board, to appreciate what I have said and that it makes a difference to us as shareholders.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair,
Mr.
I have some questions, but I will ask 2 questions first, and then I'll allow other shareholders to participate, and then I will come back and ask my other questions. So my first 2 questions, Mr. Chair. Page 3 of the audit report.
Yes.
You indicated that management has satisfied IFRS 12 requirement for impairment. How will the recoverability of these assets be verified through the carrying amount and the recoverable amount, enabling shareholders to achieve financial benefit as impairment impacts negatively on the profits? Your comment.
I'll let Suzanne answer that.
Okay, Mr.
I think the auditor would be in a better position to answer that question, Mr. Chair. Okay.
All right, so it's simple. It's not so difficult. I think Carissa will back me up if needed, but we had what we're saying here, that there was no impairment of the intangible asset throughout the period of 2021. And we're not expecting, well, the test is done every year where we look at the value of the asset, how the company is performing, and other elements to see if we need to reevaluate the value of what we hold as the amount spent for the road network, if we need to evaluate that and either write it down or something. But that test is done every year, and the test that was done last year showed that there was no impairment.
So you're telling me that there was no impairment done for 2020 and 2021?
No, the test was done, but there was no impairment. Impairment means there was no need to write down or change the value of what we have on the book. What we had still accurately reflects what the road network is valued.
But it impacted, whatever the impairment was, it impacted on the profit.
There was no impairment, so there was no impact.
So there was no impact?
No.
We talk about that after the meeting.
Sure, no problem.
Mr. Chair, please turn with me to page 9 of the financials. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in 2020,
Yes.
our total revenue, when I say total, I mean everything.
Yes.
Our total revenue
Yes.
was $47.6 million US dollars, because your numbers here are quoted in US dollars.
Sorry, what was that number here?
So your total revenue was $47.6 million US dollars. And that $47.6 million cost us $49.5 million, which led us in a loss of $1.9 million
Yes.
US dollars.
Yes.
For every US dollar that was generated,
Yes.
it cost us $1.04. So we made no profit. In 2021,
Yes.
we made total revenue of $55.9 million US dollars.
Yes.
And that $55.9 million cost us $52 million,
Yes.
which gave us a profit of $3.991 million US dollars.
Yes.
For every US dollar that was generated, it cost us 93 cents. And we made a profit of 7 cents. What is interesting, Mr. Chair, incrementally, that is, in 2021, when we achieved the 2020 figures, all those revenues that were generated between 21 and 20 was $8.3 million US dollars. And that $8.3 million cost us $2.4 million. For every dollar of incremental revenue earned, it cost us 29 cents, and we spent 71 cents as profit. We did a tremendous job in those incremental earnings. And it gives me the impression that you are on the right track of making this company a profitable one going forward. Congratulations to you again, Mr. Chair. Congratulations to your team for this effort. And the incremental information that we have seen here is showing us and telling us that you have the will to go forward making a profit for us. Thank you. I will now ask
Thank you, Mr. Stephen.
other shareholders to come while I sit.
Good morning. My name is Courtney Francis. Mr. Anderson, you touched on a topic that I think we all here, share some concern in, which was the stock price. And you're saying, based on the limited knowledge I have about stocks, the performance of the company does not necessarily reflect in the stock price. However, visibility and marketing does. And I'm on your Instagram page right now. And I'm going to say it's below poor. Even the marketing campaign that you showed us in the slideshow is not on it. It has 309 followers and it does not have a blue check. This is an official company. You guys need to apply for your blue tick. So when we go on it, we know that this is not a scammer. This is not somebody with some free time putting out information. So even though the performance of the company does not reflect the stock price, the image, the marketing, remember, stock price is all about hype, keeping it sexy. All right? It's all about hype. A company can be doing poor, but the hype of the company shoots up the stock price. So I think that's one of the problems that we could definitely look at. There's nothing current on the IGP, and that is free. Instagram is free. All right? You don't even have to pay to promote the things, but that's another avenue you guys can also look into. Also, recently I saw a video of a man pushing a bicycle into oncoming traffic on the highway. I think a big problem with that is because portions of the highway is poorly lit. And I am thinking that nights are off-peak hours. So we don't want to run away the few customers that are going to use the highway in the night anyway. So I think we definitely need to address that, because when I see that, the only thing is coming to my head, this man wants me to stop so he can rob me. And that is not good for business. All right? So I just want to know, going forward, what we're doing about the lighting and the marketing of the company.
Thank you, Courtney. Let me just answer Courtney before you ask the next question. Yes, and your comments are quite true. So, in fact, before this year, we didn't have an IG page at all. And so, part of the responsibility that the lab has is to build a brand new social media campaign. So, most of you have seen our ads in relation to the TV commercials, the radio commercials, and that's where we started. We start with the TV commercials, the radio commercials, the time signals, and those are ongoing. In July, we will launch a brand new social media campaign, which will be managed by the lab, and that will begin to get us up to speed. Agreed. Goes without saying. Yes, I also saw that video with the bicycle. The police actually arrested the gentleman. There is a little difficulty understanding whether he's of a sound mind or not. The explanation he gave to the police had to do with he was from Mandeville. He was riding down the median. He was attempting to cross, and the truck hit his bicycle. He came to see a lawyer. That was the argument. He came to see a lawyer. He forgot that it was Saturday, and he was going back home. So it seems a little like he was not all here, but the point is well made. Lighting, we have continued to improve lighting primarily at interchanges. Lighting the entire highway, I don't know if you're a shareholder, but lighting the entire highway is a massive undertaking. We have recently modified all our lights now, so we're using lithium iron phosphate batteries instead of the traditional lead-acid batteries. The batteries have a lot higher capacity, the lithium-ion batteries, and we expect to bump up the lights, the intensity of the lights at all these interchanges. But the point is well made, and that's a concern that our users have about the highway, and it's something we obviously have to look at. But it's not an undertaking that we can implement immediately. It's something that we have to look at and see how we can manage the rollout of that kind of new project, because that will be a big project for us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm
morning.
Carleen Green. I initially had two questions, but I think Courtney gave voice to one of them regarding security on the highway. So my next question is, I think you mentioned for revenue, to increase revenue, that you'll be adding ramps in developing developing communities, and the addition of the Williams Field, the Maypen to Williams Field.
Right.
I'm curious to know, are there any other operations where this is concerned to increase revenue for the company?
All right, so there are actually a number of ramps that we're looking at. I didn't actually talk about all of them. So we spoke about the ramps at Spanish Town, the Salt Pond Road. We spoke about Heartlands. But also priority on our list is the ramps at Freetown. So Freetown is where you have Master Blend, for those of you who know Clarendon, where you have Longville, that Longville development. So that entire Longville development has no access going west. They have access coming from town, from Kingston, where you can exit to Longville, but they have no access going west to Maypen, or similarly, from Maypen, they have no access exiting the highway to go to Longville. And a lot of the people in Longville, as you know, Longville is a community with more than 1,000 units. Those people don't have access to go to Maypen from the highway. So that's another priority location for us. There are also a number of other access points that we are looking at. Those are not as far advanced, but we expect that in almost every area where we're seeing development taking place, in terms of new housing developments, we're looking at those areas to see how those can add revenues to the highway.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning, sir.
Lancel Bloomfield, shareholder.
Yes, Mr. Bloomfield.
Page 51, note 19. Mr. Chair, your legal and professional fees in 2020 was 77,000 US. In 2021, the cost of these has climbed to 421,000 US. What are some of the factors that gave rise to such a massive increase?
Go ahead. You have other questions, Mr. Bloomfield?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Page 51, note 19. Admin expenses. Your staff costs is now 785,000 US. For that of 2021. What therefore is your staff complements?
You have any other question, Mr. Bloomfield?
No, sir.
All right. Suzanne.
Okay, so in terms of the legal and professional, so as we have disclosed yesterday, we have started negotiations, and this is also one of the elements. So we've been looking at a number of measures as to how to bring down our operational cost. And one of them being, as we have disclosed, is to reorganize the operations itself. And that comes with a lot of research, and we have contracts in place with both the operator and the bondholders. So it's not something that we could just do off the top of our head. And so we would have to get all the legal opinion, due diligence, and all that done in order to even begin to look at whether or not it is possible. And so those are some of the costs you're seeing coming through from works that we started on, cost-saving initiatives that we'd want to bring forward for the future.
And just to add, this item also includes our professional fees as well.
Right. Any consultants,
so,
right?
Right. So all the consultants who are involved in all of those analysis. So we've done analysis at every one of these locations. So we have traffic advisor who looks at the expected traffic that can be derived from those ramps, looks at potential toll rates that can be charged at those ramps, and how that income can then be, how that translates into income. So every one of those locations, we have an assessment being done on them.
My second question. Staff costs, which has climbed to 785,000 US. What is your staff complements?
Right, so the staff costs have not changed much. As you can see, it went from 784 to 785. So the staff complement is 8 people.
This is just a little under $1 million US. Mm-hmm. And even though the note in relation to the staff costs has some other things within it, this is a massive amount for 8 people. When you convert this sum by the Jamaican dollar exchange, this is a massive amount for 8 people. I am not saying you're not to pay your staff well enough. I'm saying this is just under $1 million US.
No, right. Thank you for pointing it out, Mr. Blink. But if you look at the actual salaries and wages, the salaries and wages which you pointed out in the note actually went down from 2020 to 2021. The way we compensate our staff, we retain the services of Price Waterhouse. They did a market benchmark survey, and our staff costs are approximately 75% of the market.
And that's the market before the survey was done on the 2019 salary positions.
So are we going to get a little more on the dividend side? We should be getting a little more on the dividend side.
There is a lot more to come, Mr. Bloomfield. We hope that when we come back to you in another 2 months, you'll be very pleased.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much for this.
And just to add, I'd want to add that though we speak about 8 persons, but we also have what we call shared staff. We have 8 full-time staff, but we have staff that we've placed, for example, as a part of our stakeholder management. We have staff placed at 2 primary schools in Maypen to manage the crossing of the children. We have staff that we share with the operator, and so they're not our full-time staff. They're not full-time hired to us, but their cost is also included in that figure.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Prince Meyer, shareholder. Mr. Chairman, in your earlier comments, you spoke about dividend price, share price and dividends.
Right.
And the gentleman before me expecting increased dividends. Likewise, all of us. But the question is there any consideration to pay dividends quarterly? All right? And I have a concern. So, as a shareholder, I really believe in partaking the product that the company that I've invested in puts on the market. So I travel the highway for more reasons than one. Until recently, I traveled the stretch from Mineralites to Portmore on a daily basis. Now, and of course I use the tag because it's extremely convenient. Now, all the tag lanes except one are positioned to the extreme left of the traffic. All of them. Everybody want to wait in the line they can. I'm in the tag lane, move to the left, gone. When you're traveling westerly from Kingston, approaching the vineyard, that tag lane is in the middle. It's not convenient, and it is worse when you get to December. You have the tag for convenience, and you have to wait in meters of traffic all the way up to the front before you can veer to the middle. I've submitted it before, no response. Can consideration be made for that tag lane to move to the left like all of the others? It's extremely convenient. That one is not convenient. All right, thanks.
Can you tell me the method by which you submitted it before? You say submitted before and there was no response. Just so we could pay
Customer service online, email.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Mr. Myers. So, in fact, at Portmore, for example, all our tag lanes are actually in the middle. So they're actually on the right. In Spanish Town, we have one tag lane. Well, at Portmore, we have the majority of our tag lanes are in the middle, and we have one on the left to accommodate people who are, for example, coming from the Dyke Road, or people who are going to Port Henderson Road. This is for Portmore. So all our tag lanes are in the middle. In Maypen, we only have one westbound tag lane, and that's in the middle. In Spanish Town, we have one tag lane on the left. The issue at Maypen is not just a question of the tag lane, the one tag lane. The vineyards. So the issue at vineyards is more than just a question of the one tag lane. It's a fact that we need more tag lanes. So what happens at vineyards, whenever you have congestion, because we only have one tag lane, especially if somebody goes into the tag lane and for some reason or the other, they may not have any money on their account, or they went into the wrong lane. What happens is they then try to reverse out of the tag lane, and then that creates more gridlock at vineyards. So at vineyards, we have that particular problem. So what we have done, or we have now analyzed vineyards to see how we can add an additional tag lane, especially on the westbound side. So if you notice, there was some work that we were doing we're actually doing the work on the eastbound side. So the idea is to add an additional lane going east, and then move one of those tag lanes in the middle to be able to improve, to give us two tag lanes going west. And we'll go through that again. So vineyards, we have 8 lanes in total. What we want to do is add a 9th lane. And then that will then allow us to get an additional tag lane going eastbound. And that should hopefully improve that situation. In terms of quarterly dividends, that's something that we will discuss with the board, and we'll advise you thereafter. Go ahead.
My name's Arthur Edison, and I'm asking you about the administration of the deferred tax asset. How will it affect our future bottom line? How will it affect dividends? How will it affect the value of the stock on the market? Will you care to comment on what to expect from that?
Okay, so deferred tax affects our profitability. Profitability is a contributing factor to retained earnings. Retained earnings is needed to be able to distribute dividends. So we may have all the cash in the world, but the distribution of that cash is going to be restricted to the amount of retained earnings that you have. And so you want to be, if you're deferred, if you're continuously having what deferred tax charge, then it's going to bring down the level of profit that you have. Likewise, if you have a deferred tax asset for the year, then it brings up your profitability. So it either adds or increases your retained earnings, because ultimately it will be added to retained earnings, and that will determine the amount of dividends that you can distribute in any period. So what was your second question again? Was
not really a second question. My question was, what kind of expectation do you have of it's increasing our dividends, it's increasing the value of the stock in trading.
Well, in terms of the value of the stock, as we have seen, and as Mr. Francis spoke about, the stock price is not so much dependent on the profit. We did excellent last year, I would think, coming from the pre-COVID, the COVID years, but the stock price, you know, we're just reaching a point where we're at the IPO price or above that. But it is our hope that we had a deferred tax charge for this year and last year, and a part of the deferred tax calculation is the provision that we hold for maintenance. And last year we did a significant amount of works which had decreased that provision. That was a one-off thing. And so, but for the future, we are expecting that we will have sufficient deferred tax to increase our profitability and allow for continuous distribution of profit to you, our shareholder.
Well, you know, it's almost inevitable that stockholders look forward to that sort of thing. I also think that the appreciation of the stock value is a major part of the reason for investing in a company like ours.
So that we are working on, Mr. Francis mentioned that marketing can play a significant factor to bring up some hype to the company. Apparently, so we are working on that.
I mean, your price per share and the value of the dividends as against the price per share.
Right. So the new marketing campaign is we are very optimistic, will bring about more of a presence for the company. And so we are diligently working on it.
Glad to hear that as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. And the last question before we go to the resolutions.
Mr. Chairman, name is Newton Brown, shareholder.
Mr. Brown.
Right. I commute on the road, the leg of the highway going into Spanish Town on a daily basis.
Yes.
However, there's a challenge with indisciplined motor vehicle operators that comes in the extreme left lane that takes us onto the toll and then force their way over into the middle lane of the widening of the road out by the on-ramp out by Mandela.
You're talking about coming east?
I'm talking going into Spanish Town, going west, westbound. Is it possible to create an express lane that keeps the unruly operators that drive along that corridor for us who are using the toll to get on a little bit more easier? I see where you put there was some cones and what they don't knock off, they take them up and throw them away. So we probably need something rigid that will allow us to get easier and earlier access to the toll, the stretch of toll road. I don't know if that's in your plan or if you are looking at that.
Mr. Brown, you're talking about before the toll plaza or after you come to
before. You're going on from Mandela, entering onto the toll road on
after
Mandela.
You come to the toll plaza?
No, I'm talking you're on Mandela, just past ferry, entering onto the toll road. Persons who use the toll road have a challenge with the Portmore leg of traffic that is forcing their way in. You have the unruly taxi operators, you have the unruly commuters who tend to go into the toll lane and also the soft shoulder lane. So we're asking if we could get an express lane that forces them off that corridor and take us smoothly in. You probably get a little bit more customer that way. I really don't know. But I experience it like every day.
Very good suggestion, Mr. Brown. We have actually had the same discussion with NWA. I know what you're talking about. So westbound, when you're coming out of Kingston in the afternoon. So that was the line of traffic, which we showed you on the slides. Initially, when Mandela was widened, NWA put up some candlesticks. There are some little red poles along that section of the road. But obviously, since then, all of them have been knocked out. We have offered NWA to replace them or to put something else in place. They have indicated that they plan to do something. So we're still waiting on that plan to come to fruition. But agreed, that is in fact the area that we were talking about earlier. If we can keep the toll road traffic in that leftmost lane, then coming out of Kingston, we can significantly improve that congestion. And agreed. So that's an issue that we're continuing in discussion with NWA about putting back they call them candlesticks, or putting in an alternative mechanism. All right, last question.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Kadisha Johnson, shareholder. All right, so as this gentleman here mentioned earlier about the taxi operators, something came to mind, what I observed one time, where the taxi operators actually, they're so skilled. You know, you pay the toll fee and then you go through, and then the taxi operator just goes through right after. I hear the beeping sound, but then it came to mind what is actually done thereafter. And then I'm imagining that there are multiple operators who are actually utilizing this trick, you know, to avoid paying these fees, getting the benefit of the highway, and of course, would be affecting our profit then or earning power, right? So I'm just wondering what it is that we actually have in place to mitigate against that. So that's one. Two, I know you said that we have gas stations and so on that we are hoping to build along the highway, but I was also thinking about like food chains and such that would actually make it a bit more enticing to the population to have along the highway as well, and how that might actually help the profits, you know, partnership or deals or so on with those personnel. Yes, those two questions.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. That's a very good observation. So Ms. Johnson was talking about a situation which we have where vehicles stay tailgate, they come right up behind a tag customer, and before the barrier can come down, they go through behind the vehicle. It tends to happen a lot in Portmore, a lot with the JUTC buses, tailgating the vehicles through. Fortunately, I'd say we have had a very good working relationship with the police. The police have actually tracked down the people, and they have come back and paid the toll. And in fact, we've had a significant decline in that regard. It's obviously something that we monitor on a monthly basis, but right now it's a very, very, very small amount of people who are doing that still. So we publicized it a few weeks ago, where some of those people were prosecuted, and they also came back and paid the toll. And so we hopefully by monitoring it, publicizing it, prosecuting people, we can keep that to be, as I said, at a minimum. Unfortunately, we don't have much land associated with the toll road except for within what we call our reservation. So within those fence lines are actually the boundary of our ownership. So in fact, one of the reasons why it has taken us a little time for the Portmore gas station and service center is because it is actually outside of the reservation. And so we're actually in discussion with the Port Authority to actually lease that section of land. But I agree with you, there are a number of opportunities like that along the highway, which we're looking at seeing how we can take advantage of those opportunities.
All right. Thank you. And just to note, as you said, you have your marketing campaign that you intend to work on, really looking forward to that. Just to mention that there are a number of young investors who are coming on like crazy, never before. And so it's very important for us to tackle those persons who are coming onto the market now to make TransJamaica the stock of choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson.
Resolutions. We have two questions from our online shareholders. So the first being from Ms. Edwards Henry. When will the ramp entrance from Jacaranda and Silverson area be built? That's our first question.
So we expect to be able to start this year and hopefully to be completed in the next year.
Okay, second question. Are there future plans to provide access to the toll from other areas such as the Sligoville area?
Sligoville is not quite our highway, but we talked about those areas along our highway that we're proposing to provide new access from.
Okay, and the second shareholder question from let me get her name, Tamika Stewart. So she asked a question that was raised before, if we could consider quarterly dividends instead of once per year. And that was answered. We'll review with the board. Her next question is, when is the next payout, dividend payout? So I think that's a very good question. And I'll just say, Ms. Stewart, so we've always forecasted doing the payout at the end of the year, sweeten the Christmas. But as we're going to be taking it to the board to review quarterly, we will definitely let our shareholders know what is the response coming from the board.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. So let's move on to the resolutions.
Mr. Chair, you had promised that after I ask my 2 questions, and all shareholders ask, I will be able to come back and answer.
Mr. Stapler, I'm going to propose at the end of the resolutions, we'll have another session just in case people have any more questions, and I'll allow you to ask questions at a time. All right, so the first resolution, that the audited accounts for the year ended December 31, together with the reports of the directors and auditors, thereon be and are hereby adopted. Can I have someone to move that resolution? Thank you, Mr. Staple. Seconded. Give me a name, sorry. Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. All those in favor? Aye. Motion is carried.
Shouldn't you ask if there's anybody who votes no?
I think we had a unanimous aye in that vote. The second resolution is that the interim dividends of US $6.9 million, equivalent to $0.55 per 1,000 shares paid on December 20th, 2021, for the year be and are hereby ratified and declared as final, and that no further dividend be paid in respect of the year under review. Can I have someone propose? Sorry, I didn't get it. Barton. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Seconded.
Arthur Edison.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion is hereby carried. The third resolution that the retiring director, Stephen Ed.
These retired directors, who are they?
Mr. Edwards is not here with us today, but Mr. Brown is here with us today. Mr. Edwards apologized. He was.
I think in future all directors should be able to attend. Cut out this foolishness about this online business of attending meetings. They should be here physically, just as how we are here physically. Those directors should be here physically so we can know who's who.
Thank you, Mr. Staples. The point
So
is
in
made.
future, all directors must be physically at all meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Staples. The point is made. Well, let me just apologize again for Mr. Edwards. He was not well this morning. So the resolution is that the retiring director, Stephen Edwards, be and is hereby re-elected as director of the company. Can I have a motion can I have a mover? A seconder? Sorry, I didn't get the name. Thank you. All in favor of this resolution? Aye. The motion is carried. That the retiring director, Bentley Brown, be and is hereby re-elected as director of the company. Can I have a mover?
I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. Seconded. All in favor of this resolution? All in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is carried. The fourth resolution that the amount included in the audited accounts of the company for the year ended December 31 as remuneration for their services as directors be and is hereby approved. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Mr. Staple. Seconded. Thank you, Ms. Green. All in favor of this resolution? Aye. The motion is carried. And the final resolution, that Ernst & Young Chartered Accountants, having agreed to continue in office as auditors of the company, be and are hereby reappointed auditors of the company to hold office until the next annual general meeting at a remuneration to be fixed by the board of directors of the company. May I have a proposer? Thank you, Ms. Jackson. A seconder?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
The motion is carried. Are there any other general questions and comments that anyone has? Go ahead, Mr. Staple.
Mr. Chair, turn with me to page 11 of the audited report. Cash flows. Explain what accounted for this significant change in restricted cash, and will you define what restricted cash means? Your comments. Page 11.
Sorry. All right, so I'll answer you, Mr.
Have you
Staple.
seen that line item?
For restricted cash, page 11? No. I'm not looking at the particular line item, but I can explain what the restricted cash is and why it has moved. Okay? All right, so in explaining first, the restricted cash is comprised of funds we hold in reserve, both locally and overseas, and this is by order of the contracts we have with our bondholders. So the restricted cash is made up of a reserve for debt servicing to make sure that we have at least 6 months of the payments for the bond in an account at all times. There's also an account for major maintenance to make sure that we are considering the major maintenance for about, I think, 3 years and putting aside funds to do those works. There's also a reserve for routine or day-to-day expenditures in the event that, God forbid, we saw it in COVID, if we were in a tight position and we needed to pay our day-to-day suppliers, we could have pulled from that reserve. Gratefully, we were not in a position where we had to pull from the reserve. So those are the reserves we hold offshore. There's also another reserve which we hold locally, and we call the distribution account. And that account, is where we keep the funds, where we hope to do distribution to the shareholders and to make improvements to the network. So when you see the difference, there was an increase between the reserve for last year, 2021, and over 2020, and that is because when we have, as a part of the arrangements we have with the bondholders or lenders, once we've met all the operational obligations, we are allowed to move any cash that is left over in the till to the reserve account so that we can, when we say we're going to distribute, we will have sufficient funds to distribute.
So you're saying then that the change in this line item resulted from what?
So the change resulted from the excess cash we had in operations being moved to the reserve account to handle matters such as distribution, improvements, etc. So it's coming from the revenue that we had So when whatever we've had left after taking care of all the operational needs for last year, and after making sure that all the offshore reserve accounts are fully funded, then whatever was left, we moved it to the distribution account for future use.
Mr. Chair, turn me to page 54. NROC agreed to contribute 13.5 million US to the financing of phase 1B. Is this a gift? Your comments.
Sorry, where?
Page 54.
Note 22?
NROC agreed to contribute 13.5 million to the financing of phase 1B. And I'm asking, is this a gift?
So it's a part of the what should I say now? So it's not, I wouldn't say it's so much a gift. It was a part of the arrangement that we had to facilitate the building of that phase of the highway.
Is this interest free?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, and for everybody, just to clarify. So this is 2011.
2011. Right.
Right. So that was we're talking about in 2011. And phase 1B we're talking about is the section of roadway that was built from Sandy Bay to Maypen. So in 2011, NROC agreed to contribute 13.5 million to the financing of phase 1B. So that's the section of road that was built previously. And it was contributed as a gift, yes. But it has been recovered in the 2020 refinancing. Some amount of that has been recovered in the 2020 refinancing.
There's two more questions and I'll finish. Turn me to page 55. What accounted for the directors passing a resolution effecting an immediate write back of 62.26 million US to accumulated profit? How will shareholders benefit from this?
All right, so a part of, you spoke about the 13.5 million. So a part of the restructuring exercise, in 2011, when we were constructing phase 1B, the loans, there was a particular transaction that took place. So the loans we had on our books with NROC, or with the government of Jamaica through NROC, were converted into a grant. And that grant for us was recorded on our balance sheet as a liability. A part of that grant, NROC also had a preference share as a part of the conversion. In 2020 now, when we were restructuring our organization, the value of that grant was the 62.2 million that you see there. And that was written off. So we were not asked to repay or give back anything in favor of that grant. That was written off, and that was written off to retained earnings, and that helped to boost or increase our retained earnings and allowed us to be able to distribute. And so at the end of last year, we had 27 million in retained earnings, and a part of that positive retained earnings is coming from the restructuring that we did in 2020.
And lastly, Mr. Chair, management remuneration is relating to that executive who is on the board. Now, that value of management remuneration should be part of the annual report, and it is not. Why has this been omitted? And I would like to get that number. No.
Sorry, Mr. Staple, could you repeat? I'm not sure. What is the question?
Management remuneration should be part of the reporting to us as shareholders. And that management remuneration relates to that individual, that executive, who is a member of the board. Whatever his remuneration is, or whatever the remuneration is, should be part of the annual report, and it is not. Why?
So if you look at note 9 under related party in the financial statements, you see.
No. It should significantly, it should be precise. It should say management remuneration, not directors. Management remuneration, because that management is that executive who is part of the board. And that amount should be there in the report.
So there's a line for key management compensation.
What's that?
There's a line there on, this is page 43.
No, it's not saying management remuneration. And management remuneration by definition says it is that executive, which is different from management fee.
Well, we do
totally
not have.
Different.
So at present, the board is comprised of independent directors. We don't have any non-executive.
Is there any executive who is on the board?
No, not at present.
None?
No.
Are you sure of that?
Yes, Mr. Staple.
There is no executive who is on the board?
You'd have seen the board members, Mr. Staple.
I don't believe that.
I think at the start, Mr. Staple, we showed you the
board members there.
The board members. I can just go back to them.
So it's like a second slide.
Yeah, let me just give me 10 seconds.
We're finished.
Right. So these are the members of the board. Mr. Staple?
Mr. Staple.
These are the members of the board. So those are the 8 members of the board, and these are the management team. Go ahead.
I'd like to know if you're employing.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to know if you're employing. Is there any employment available?
If there's an employment available?
Yeah, are you employing?
We can talk after the meeting if you want.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Sure. I would like to say thanks to you and your team for providing us with this facility today, for enabling us as shareholders to be able to come physically in our meetings.
Thank you.
All of the records should have been here.
Thank you, Mr. Staple. Your point is well noted. Ladies and gentlemen, as we formally close this section, thank you all for your attendance and interest, and we look forward to your continued support in the coming year. Please continue to keep safe and look forward to welcome you to our next AGM. For those of you who are here, we have some light refreshments. Feel free to talk to any of us if you have any further questions. And thank you again. Have a great day. Thank you very much.